Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Art in the Wild. I hope you guys are doing good. I'm doing great. Today, I'm sitting here with Jack Medeiros, and we're going to be talking about animal behavior and animal tracking and how that plays into wildlife photography and stuff. But first, I'll have him talk a little bit more about himself, how long he's been shooting, where he's from, stuff like that.
Hey guys. My name's Jack Medeiros. I don't have my last name in my actual page, but you probably know me as JM Wildlife. But yeah, I'm from Southern Ontario, and I've been shooting about since 2018. Yeah, since like 2018. But I didn't think I. But usually from 2018 till about 2020, my images were not so good. But I
Mhm.
think I started getting like somewhat decent around 2021 to like early 2022 maybe.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's pretty much how long I've been shooting for.
Awesome. Your new stuff has been solid. The frog shots,
Thank
man.
you.
Those are
Thank
awesome. Yeah. I'll have your account
you.
tagged on this. But yeah, you guys should
Perfect.
check out his work. He has some really awesome frog shots that he just posted. Now, you started back in like 2018 or 2019. What was kind of the first encounter with a wild animal that got you into this? Was it like one moment, or was it just kind of a progression of events over the course of your life that got you into wildlife and then just kind of resulted in this taking place?
I mean, there's kind of like two parts to that question. So all throughout my life, I've had those moments like I've always kind of been around nature and like
Mhm.
wildlife. So I remember in my backyard when I was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old, I was like catching like frogs and snakes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that kind of like introduced me to like what nature is, and then I would always go like fishing trips with my dad,
Mhm.
and we'd all down like the water for like almost all day. So you're bound to see something, right?
Mhm.
We did just by catching the fish, and I remember this one moment like this blue heron just kind of like landed right in front of us, like right beside us where
Yeah.
we were fishing. It was just like so cool. So that's like, and I was like so close to like a heron. I'm like 5, 6 years old. So like, and that, herons are kind of pretty tall, right? So I'm kind of like looking right eye
Yeah.
level into
Things
his
as big as
eyes.
you are, right?
Yeah, so it was kind of freaked out. But then once my dad's like, "Oh, it's okay. They're not going to do anything."
Mhm.
My dad called it a crane, like he thought it was one of
Yeah.
those like cranes, and like that's how uneducated we were at the time about that stuff. But yeah, just moments like that. That's kind of introduced me like into like nature and just being in the outdoors.
Yeah.
But I think for like wildlife photography, what made me want to get like, okay, this is what I want to do, like take more seriously. I want to get shots like this like all the time.
Mhm.
Was my wolf encounter and like kind of like not quite northern Ontario, but like it's more northern than where I live. I'm like right by Lake Ontario.
Yeah.
So like kind of like central northern Ontario, let's say.
Mhm.
When I had that wolf encounter just in the snowstorm, that was pretty cool. And it was I think it was a pup from about 2 years ago, and it came right so close to me in the snowstorm, just me and the wolf, and I got these. It probably came about 20, 15 feet away from me. With it, and those were like I got frame fillers. That's like I think like I had a 70 to 300 Nikon at the time.
Mhm.
And I think I got like frame, and this is full frame. I had D800,
Oh wow.
and they were. I think I got like frame fillers, at like I don't want to say quite at 70, but the 80 millimeters. Like
Jeez.
that's
It's close.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's so I could have got like wide angle like shots with that, like a
Mhm.
35 mil or something like that.
That's wild.
And
Yeah.
that's what maybe like because all my other images were just meh at the time,
Mhm.
or like or they're probably even garbage. But once I saw those ones, I'm okay. Damn, it's just like I know that's a great shot, and that's what make I want to. I was thinking like I want to get more photos like that.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So that's when I like said, okay, I'm gonna try to like. That's when I started like going binge watching like YouTube videos and it's like how to improve. Like just kind of like just seeing other people's work, following more of those people.
Mhm.
Just see like how can I improve my shooting and kind of get like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
Yeah,
The that wolf encounter is wild, man.
yeah,
I had a wolf encounter this past February. I
yeah,
went up there looking for wolves and I didn't see them during the day. I did find the pair I was going after at night on the
yeah,
road, which was just it was amazing. They're
yeah.
beautiful animals too. The when you picked up like you photographed the wolf and that was like the moment when you really wanted to improve your photography.
Mhm.
Did what how did you get the camera? Did you get the camera and start photographing in general from like a school project or something or like a present or how did that work?
Well, I started taking up like pictures.
Mhm.
Like I got my first real camera. I think it was like Christmas of 2017. But then went on to go use it like early 2018.
Mhm.
So I forgot to mention that at the start. Like it was like I started taking pictures on my phone, like and I had on my
Same, yeah.
phone just like frogs. Started off with
Yeah.
frogs. It'd be kind of cool the footage, like show my 2017 iPhone 6s frog shots compared to the ones I
Yeah.
just got. That'd be kind of funny.
Yeah.
But anyway, I would started off with that just like a local creek in Kingston somewhere, and yeah, she kind of started off from there, and then I started seeing like other people's frog shots. Like, oh, that's got like there's had that like pro like full frame or just more like DSLR kind of look. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't
Mhm.
look like they're taken on a phone.
Yeah.
So then I started to buy like I couldn't afford like an actual like even a point and shoot at the time, so I just had to use what I had. So then I got like these $35 like Walmart, like those phone lenses, like they're like clip-on lenses you can buy
Hmm.
for your phone.
Hmm.
They're getting those, and like there was like a macro one on there, a fisheye, and there was also it was like a macro, fisheye, wide angle, and like a very like slight telephoto, like a 50 millimeter,
Yeah.
something like that. So that's how I kind of like got into it. But then I kind of used that the best I could. But then I'm kind of a perfectionist in a way. Like not everything, but there's a little bit of perfectionism in me. Like
Hmm.
I'm like, damn it, I can't keep getting the photos I'm trying to go for with my phone, right? So I got like I think my first DSLR. It was a Nikon D3200, I believe.
Hmm.
It was just with a kit lens, right? So it came with a one 18 to 55 and like a 28 to 200 or something like that. It
Yeah.
was a
I think I
Nikon
know
lens.
which lines you're talking about.
For the longest time, I started like taking pictures on that, and yeah, then over the years, just kind of progressed, or like some broke, some like I lost or got stolen,
Yeah.
something like that, or then
Yeah.
but then eventually, like down the road, I settled with Canon, and then just yeah, like
Switching
I
from
used to be.
Nikon, man. Switching from
Yeah,
Nikon.
I used to be a Nikon guy, but then
Yeah.
also like when I was looking to get into like my first somewhat decent investment in a camera,
Hmm.
like for like I'm talking about like a full frame or just a higher end APS-C, like
Yeah.
Nikon like didn't have any good options. Like the only good option like at the time, this is like before mirrorless really took off. I think even before mirrorless came out, and it was about only good one was like the D850, and I'm like I can't afford that shit. Like I'm in high school, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
but then they had the D800, which I did end up getting.
Hmm.
And that was like I lost that one in a lake. I think I've told you that story with the dock spider.
Yes. Yes. I think you did. Yeah.
That was well, I told the whole group chat that, but no one seems to remember. Like they're like, oh, I never heard about that. Like,
Yeah.
but then after that, and then I had to go to a point and shoot, like a Canon Power Shot or something like that. After that, so going from a 36 megapixel full frame to a Canon Power Shot is it's
That's
pretty
rough. Yeah.
heartbreaking. It's pretty heartbreaking.
That's gotta be, yeah, that's difficult.
But then after like after the bridge camera, I had to. Then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go with a. I can't. I've had so many cameras, but I think my after that my first good camera, these cameras like a 5D Mark II.
Hmm.
Not the best for wildlife, but it could work. But it was still like image quality wise, it was
Yeah.
really good. Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
the 302 and 302.8. I forgot to mention that. So
Wow, that's a good line. Yeah.
yeah.
Didn't you shoot micro four thirds at one point?
Oh
Am I right
yeah,
on that?
I did. That's what. Yeah, I did. That was more somewhat recent. That was like early. I think no, it was like late 2021, early 2022.
Yeah, I think so. That would
Yeah,
make
I
sense
did.
because I think I was in
Yeah,
college when you were doing that.
yeah. I actually got some pretty like I got the Lumix G9, which is actually Panasonic gets very like they get shit on for their autofocus a lot,
Yeah.
but but at the time, but now apparently their new S5 or two S5 two or something. I forget the name of it. Has like
Mhm.
pretty good autofocus. Like they can compete with more of the other brands. I don't
Yeah.
know how well, but at the time, like the Pro bodies, they had like horrible autofocus. But this one, it was kind of known in the Lumix community is that G9, the Micro Four Thirds, had the best autofocus, even a lot better than like the flagship models.
Hmm.
At the time, it was really weird because that it had animal eye detection.
Oh,
It's
really?
like it was a mirrorless Micro Four Thirds. It was like one of the first kind of mirrorless cameras that had the animal eye detection.
Hmm.
I think came out roughly before the R5 and R6 from Canon. I think which were one of the first eye detection ones. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I mean so it had a really good autofocus. The only struggle was like the depth of field. Like I mean, like I had a 100 to 300 and a
Hmm.
100 to 400 on the Micro Four Thirds
Yeah.
lens. and it was like I love the 800 millimeter reach, but then it was like a 6.7, but sometimes that by two, it's like F12 equivalent. Like
Hmm.
an eight is like an 800 F14 equivalent. So you're not getting, and plus, so you're not getting like the best bokeh, but still decent.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
I
So
got
it
you.
was just I love that camera, but it was very limiting, especially for like owls and low light. It was really challenging. I had to like do like long exposures with them and like you know what I mean? It was just kind of more difficult.
Yeah, you got a Boreal on that setup, right?
But yeah, I got the Boreal out. Yeah, that's one thing. If I would have had that shot on my like an APS-C or a full frame,
Hmm.
that shot would have been like 1,000 times better.
On the
It's just
R10 and the 100 to 400 you're running now, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
even though like the 100 to 400 RF is F8, it has really good image stabilization. So like
Yeah.
I've handheld shots of that like one fourth of a
That's
second.
wild. That's wild.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, I've always been Nikon. I've stuck with it the whole time. I haven't really
yeah,
broke any gear, but I did one time.
yeah.
I was starting off with a D50 100. It was kind of my first serious camera, and then I had this
Oh
little
yeah,
300 millimeter thing. I think it was a Tamron.
oh
And
yeah. The 70 to 300 Tamron.
yes,
I've had
yes.
that one. That one's just
Mm-hmm. Yep.
horrible. Yeah, I've had
That
that.
it was intriguing. But that was my starting off lens, and then I fell
Yeah.
asleep with it near my feet, and I kicked it off the couch and broke it.
Oh,
So yeah, that was rough. But I got it. They weren't super expensive, so I bought another one, and then yeah, it goes. It's funny how it goes from. I started on my phone as well. It goes from shooting on your phone and then progresses just wasting way too much
yeah.
money on photography gear.
Honestly, yeah. Yeah,
Now
with the amount of like Nikon entry level DSLRs, like I also had the D50 200 as well. I
I
think you
have that
mentioned the
one too. Yeah.
D50 100.
Hmm.
I had that one. And I had like then I had the I think I actually had the 70 to 300 Tamron with that one. That's we almost had like the same setups early on.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, that's
and
crazy.
then I also I but then I had like then I got like the Nikon brand, the VR 70 to 300, which is actually a really good lens. It was like 800 brand new, get for like 400 now or something like that. But it's
Hmm.
actually really, really sharp and great autofocus. That
Yeah, yeah.
Nikon 70 to 300.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I've heard good things about that. Now, looking at
yeah,
tracking wildlife and wildlife behavior, do you think, and this is a tough question because
yeah,
I was going to say, do you think it's the most important element of wildlife photography? And obviously that's tough because there's so many things like there's
yeah.
the technical, there's the artistic side, there's the field
Yes.
knowledge. But do you think if it's either the most important or like one of the most like up there near the top?
Yeah, definitely it's got to be in the top. I don't know where
Mhm.
it would rank, but I mean, for example, yeah, like animal behavior and just knowing your subject is so important
Yeah.
because honestly, if you think about it, it can like make or break. The more you know, like it can like if you don't know anything about a subject, for
Hmm.
example, like shorebirds, let's use that as an example. If you know nothing about them, nothing about how like skittish they are, where they feed, and what habitats they're in, stuff like that. We just go out there and just see them, don't even like just kind of have like a regular approach. Let's just say that for example, you're just gonna approach them. I don't think you would something else, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Like chances are, if you approach with any shorebird standing up, or like even if you go really really slowly, they
Hmm.
see a full grown ass human being standing up, they're gonna take off. I
Freak
literally had
out.
that
Yeah.
experience. I had that experience today because I was shooting spotted sandpipers in this moving stream,
Hmm.
it was so rocky, so I couldn't like approach like I could on a beach, like lying down and crawling like a crocodile. I couldn't
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
that because it was so rocky. So I kind of had to like I don't know like walk really really funny like on my like my legs, but crunch down. That still wouldn't work. But I
Hmm.
found times when I did get eye level, like when I like on my stomach with them,
Hmm.
they calm right down. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, like if for example, if you don't know anything about your subject, you don't know those kind of little small but very knowledgeable and useful things,
Hmm.
like you won't be able, it won't oftentimes it won't allow you to get good like the really good shots and kind of like those moments as you could if if you did apply certain things like that. So honestly, yeah, I think to answer your question, yeah, I think animal behavior, yeah, it's definitely probably in the top three most important elements of wildlife photography. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, I think I
Um,
would agree. It's tough because it's like a
yeah,
subcategory. Because when people talk
Yeah.
about the most important elements of wildlife photography, my mind initially goes to, technique and lighting and composition and knowing how to
Yeah.
use your gear effectively. And that's kind of where
100%.
my brain goes. But the issue is if you can't find any animals, none of that matters, right? I've talked to
Exactly.
people. I've talked to some
Yeah.
people, and I was talking to this one person once years and years ago, and they're like, I've been looking for a snowy owl for 10 years and I've never seen one. And in my area, they're pretty abundant if you know where to look. So
Yeah.
I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, like where are you looking from? They're like, oh, in the forest, and it's like, in
Yeah.
like the dense forest. I'm like, yeah, dude. I mean, if I went on a 2-decade expedition to Nevada to look for harbor porpoises, I'm also not going to find
Yeah.
any harbor porpoises because they don't live in the middle of the desert, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's an extreme example, but the general
Yeah.
gist of it is if you don't know where to look for your subject, you're either just not going to see them at all, or the locations you do get are going to be
Yeah.
through online platforms like eBird or a location from a
Mhm.
friend or social media, which is probably going to be
Right.
swamped by photographers. So having that
Exactly.
knowledge to know, okay, if I'm looking for long-eared owls, going into a really dense forest
Hmm.
is probably not the best bet, you know. And things of
Yeah.
that nature. And I think it's really important for finding your subjects because if you can't find them, none of the
100%.
other stuff matters, right?
And also another thing is that animal behavior, like, let's say you get a shot of like let's say you get a barred owl or there's like an owl. It's relatively when they're roosting, they're very kind of still.
Mm-hmm.
And then depending on the composition, if you just get a sleeping barred owl, for example, and you're just taking a picture, you know what I mean? Like their behavior, I mean, like those shots you see of like a some sort of owl and it's like yawning or it's like stretching, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Or like pushing its wings in like a very nice kind of setting. Like those shots when if you can like when the animals like displaying their behavior, for example, like a shorebird like foraging or stuff like that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
those can add so much more to your shots.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I recently got a shot of a barred owl, or two barred owl pair
Mm-hmm.
of like in them, and I didn't. That kind of just happened like right in front of me,
Yeah.
but I knew I kind of happened just right in front of me at the time, but. The female was perched there getting mobbed by not chickadee, blue jays at the time. And the male kind of like came in and like scared them off and started preening her because the blue jays messed up the owl's feathers and stuff. So it was one of
Yeah.
those really cool moments. But if I just got a shot, the shot was already pretty and it was decent with just the female sitting on that perch. But then when the male came and so and started doing its like kind of protective instinct kind of behavior,
Yeah.
just added it made the shot like so much better. You know what I'm saying? Like
Definitely. Yeah.
so that's also like animal behavior like you can also add to your photo if you can capture it right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, action can really add a lot of character to an image. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
tough because a lot of the time I'm really weird because I don't use any denoising software at the moment, which I need to start doing.
yeah.
But
True.
I
Yeah,
so I find myself at really low ISOs a lot of the time, which means I find myself at really slow shutter speeds, which means
right.
all of the potential action shots I could get are completely ruined by my motion blur. You know what I'm saying?
True. Yeah,
So that's something I need to start doing more is just getting action and behavior and images, and
yeah.
not necessarily action, just movement, but seeing like if you were shooting you know, a snowy egret standing in a marsh by itself versus a snowy egret doing that little dance run around they do when they're chasing after fish. I don't know if you guys get snowies up there. Do you get snowy egrets up there?
No egrets. There's been some reported, like,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not
Yes.
like it's not super rare, but it's not super common.
Yeah.
And when they do, they're often like off the 401 highway, which is really busy in a marsh, like way out there. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not
When
really
one of
yeah.
my spots, it's like a salt pan area, and these salt pans will fill up with herons and egrets. It's mostly a lot of great egrets, some great blue herons. Sometimes we'll get like tricolored in there or something, but you
Oh
get a
yeah.
lot of these snowy egrets, and it's funny because they'll run around and they just like chase fish, and
Mhm.
they're just crazy when they're doing it. It's very amusing to
Oh
watch,
yeah.
and I think getting that action in
Yeah.
your shot is going to make an overall improved shot over one
Mhm.
that's just sitting there looking at you in a marsh, all just
Yeah.
boring and not.
Yeah.
I really like shots of a subject just sitting there in a pretty scene.
Yeah.
I appreciate that personally, but I know a lot of people, if it's not doing anything interesting, they don't really see any reason for taking the shot or posting the image because,
That is
like,
true. Yeah,
like,
yeah, it's just quote unquote sitting there. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah,
So No,
Sorry,
no,
go ahead.
no, keep going, keep going.
Okay, I was just gonna say that sometimes like for me for those kind of shots to work, it needs to have like some at least have a it's just gonna be kind of the animal's just gonna be sitting there. You gotta have like a nice maybe context and environment around it to make up for it.
Yeah.
I find like yeah, because I honestly like when I'm taking pictures of like a barred owl, for example, like I see so many shots people get them with the yawn. Like I really like when they like yawn or just do a wing stretch.
Mhm.
But oftentimes like I'm never like I'm ready for it, but am I usually I always shoot kind of lower shutter speeds than I should. Like
Yeah,
not to like make
same
them
here.
sharp, but
Yeah.
like I always try to keep my eyes as low as possible. But
Mhm.
so when it does do a wing stretch or like there's a shake or something, you know what I mean? It's I always kind of miss those. Or if I do get it in sharp, it's like if I get it in focus or like I don't know, or if I do get it like sharp and like my autofocus goes out of focus and just locks onto something else.
Yeah.
It's not motion blurred, so
Yeah, it's
yeah.
funny when you're shooting on low shutter speeds and like an owl does the shake and it's just like its body's all sharp, or any bird in general, its body's all sharp and its head is just this blur, circular blur. You know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about? That's always fun. But yeah, I mean, I've had a lot
Uh,
of issue with action shots with low shutter speed. It's gotten to the point where, because I just like the colors and stuff at blue hour and like later in golden hour
yeah.
more, which means higher shutter speeds, and I mean lower shutter speeds, sorry.
Yeah.
And usually whenever there's action, and it like the animal runs or hops or flies or yawns or literally blinks, my initial thought is, okay, I missed that because my shutter speed's too low, so
Mhm.
I need to start
Yeah.
using that denoising software. So
Yeah.
looking at animal behavior as well, something else you brought up that you want to talk about was like tracking animals. Now,
Yeah.
I have zero experience with tracking. When I went out to look for wolves in Minnesota, I saw some animal tracks in the snow, one of those being Canada lynx. I saw some Canada lynx tracks. I didn't get to see the cat,
Yeah.
but they were crazy because it just looks like you took an Eggo waffle and just threw it on the ground and it was just a little circle. I mean,
Mhm.
the huge paw tracks for how big those cats are.
I know. Yeah.
It's insane. But I also saw, what else? I saw otter tracks. So the otter, you could see it. It was like its little feet were running, and then it would slide 4 feet, and there would be like this 4 to 10 foot slide, and then it would run, 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 and then slide, and run, 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 run.
Mhm.
And that went for like 2 miles down this road we were looking for wolves on. And I mean, I was able to look for wolf tracks and find wolf tracks and know they're in the area, but I don't really have
Mhm.
the experience actually tracking. I think part of that
Yeah.
is due to the limited amount of open land available, like public
Right.
land here where I'm at. But
Mhm.
when you're looking to track an animal, are you like looking at an area that looks like looking at a piece of private property that say looks good for wolves, for example, and being
Yeah.
like, oh,
So
I want to go track wolves there? Or are you just going to a spot and being like, okay, I'm just going to look for a general sign of whatever animal, whether it be tracks or scat or whatever, and try to track it through that way?
I mean, it's kind of both. So
Mhm.
there's one area, like, so for tracking in the summer is a lot more difficult than winter because
I can
there's no
imagine. Yeah.
snow, right? But I mean,
Mhm.
it's still, if you really kind of know what you're doing, it can be done. Like for example, definitely for those kind of shots, look for like mud, dirt, sand, where the tracks can kind of be like determined through,
Mhm.
and just scat other signs of them. But yeah, definitely. So where should I start here? Because recently I uploaded these like about a few weeks ago uploaded these shots of a coyote. If
Yeah.
it's a coyote, you know that one, but there's some foreground and it's kind of more of a small on frame kind of shot.
Mhm.
I still have I gotta upload some more of like close encounters I got, but based so I've been going there kind of early in the mornings, late evenings. I frequent there quite a bit because it's like 10 minutes from my house.
Mhm.
And so when I'm there, I kind of know because coyotes, if you see like a coyote like frequent like through its tracks, or if you just see it like
Mhm.
cross the trail or see it in person, coyotes in particular and wolves are very like they're very like usually have like a um really kind of accurate and routine based like travel pattern. So if
Mhm.
you see a coyote cross the trail at one time a day, like a certain time of day, chances are it's probably gonna be in that area, like not exactly the same time, but like kind of like roughly around that same time. For example, like I've got pictures of a coyote like crossing the trail, and on my camera, like if you have your camera time and date set, it will actually tell you the time. Then I got it like a few days. A few days seen me crossing,
Mhm.
they're all like within 10 minutes of each of that time, like around 5:30 or like 5:40, something like that, for example. So they're very kind of particular, like when but any obviously anything can disrupt its route. Like if it runs into a predator, like a bear or something, and it
Yeah.
has to fight out, you know what I mean? Or it
Mhm.
runs into another human. But so what I did for those shots is I knew it was like honestly because I've been seeing it there on my camera for the past little while, but it's just kind of been like shitty light in those
Mhm.
other shots. So I kind of and you can see it crosses this big field of tall grass, and it's crossing there so much it has like a dent, like and not like a dent, but you can see its path through the grass.
Yeah.
So I got there about half an hour in advance
Mhm.
and just kind of like looked for like a best spot where I know we're gonna be passing through.
Yeah.
Coyotes, they will if you watch them enough, they will often like walk and then kind of like stop, sniff around, and look around
Mhm.
because they're so like, especially in an area where there's a lot of pressure by humans or predators
Mhm.
because they're a lot more skittish and they worry a lot more.
Yeah.
So I kind of just waited in a spot where I know it would be crossing, and I got a whole series, but the one I really liked was when it was kind of further away, the furthest away,
Mhm.
and I zoomed out to like 100 millimeters on my lens, and I got that foreground shot. So
Mhm.
which so with that knowledge, of their behavior and kind of like we're like tracking, like where they're gonna be.
Mhm.
That helped me get that shot, which I was pretty happy with. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good
yeah,
example. Yeah, it's really important. And going to
yeah.
predicting the animal's behavior, this was a later question I was going to ask, but I'm actually going to move it up to now because I think it's
All
relevant.
right, perfect.
Just looking at how, like, other examples of how knowing an animal's behavior has helped. You brought up shorebirds earlier, and for me, that's my main example. I mean,
Yeah,
I shoot piping plovers primarily, and up
right.
here, if you try and photograph a piping plover or any shorebird for that matter, walking towards it, standing up, you're just going to get shots at its back because it's not going to
Yeah,
be anywhere near you. It's going to keep
exactly.
going away and away and away. And
Hmm.
until you've walked 2 miles and that you've kept that bird from foraging, right? Um,
Uh-huh.
but we're on the other hand, though, if you just lie down on the sand and wait,
Yeah,
I had piping plovers earlier this season back in April get like 6 feet from me and just walk by and then like
yeah.
eat some little bug off the ground and then just keep walking by me. And it's really
Hmm.
important to know that behavior because first off, I think in general you're going to be a little more ethical in your approach. And we can talk about that in a little bit, but also you're going to get
100%.
better images straight up. Like if you
Yeah,
know the animal's
yeah.
behavior. So are there any more examples that you have, like stories from where the behavior really helped you get an image was like kind of fundamental?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. There's one encounter I had with it was a barred owl. It was a barred owl. I
Mhm.
just spot that I shoot at quite often.
Yeah.
And usually with owls, it was hunting. It was hunting. So they're gonna be flying from like tree to tree,
Mhm.
and then like tree to tree, and even so I was kind of watching it from a distance. It was like kind of hunting the edges of this kind of open area in the
Mhm.
woods. So then I kept watching it because obviously like when they're hunting, I try to stay as back as far away,
Yeah.
depending on the individual owl, because I find this location, the barred owls they're often hunted like they roost right around to public walking trails.
Mhm.
So even when like but there's pictures that other photographers have taken of me just to kind of show me is of me like a video of me photographing an owl, and it's pretty close, but it was about 10 feet away from me. But it's if you actually look, it's still hunting, and it's still like looking around, and it's not like concerned about me, even though I'm 10 feet away from it. So it kind of depends
Yeah.
on the individual animal. But he with this owl in particular, sometimes I find in the summer and the winter, I find when the snow is really deep or like or and the snow is really deep and if the summer grass is really thick, I find the barred owls actually go up higher and closer. I feel like it gives them a better view, like a better vantage point, just looking when they're closer looking into the deep grass or like in the snow, you know what I mean? So it kept coming up higher. And then I knew it was going a certain direction. So I kind of, started headed that way towards where it was going.
Mhm.
And so then when it's that shot, it's on my Instagram. It's with the setting sky at dusk.
Hmm.
That's where it's got its like foot by its mouth and it's like preening it what it just ate.
Yeah.
That one, yeah, that's the shot I'm talking about. That was I think late fall. And so I find and then that owl was like way ahead of it at the time. It kept go moving forward and forward.
Hmm.
I don't know why, because I've seen maybe it's prey. Prey was just going constantly going my direction. And it turns out it was chasing a squirrel.
Hmm.
It was chasing a squirrel. So I mean so if I was just kind of back where I was before, I wouldn't have had that pink sky kind of in my and I kept all those things in mind. And it was still kind of higher up, but then when you're further away, I mean, then technically if it's not eye level, you can kind of get the eye level perspective more when
Yeah.
you're further away, just zoomed in.
Hmm.
So that's the only other example like that I have like of on my Instagram of the shots that I can think how a situation like what you can use like a certain situation how you can use certain things to your advantage knowing their behavior
Hmm.
because I do have a bunch of others but they're not like shots on my like on Instagram I can kind of show for because I could easily just say oh I use this for this and use that knowing this knowledge and got a really good shot but if I can't back up the shot it might not be that good you know what I mean
Yeah, I got you.
so but honestly, yeah, that's how like just stuff like that, like I said about the coyote and the barred owl, and just kind of just observing the situation, like just kind of knowing like you can't know too much about an animal if you're going to photograph it. Like the more you know, the better. So
Exactly.
like if no one complains, oh, I know too much about this owl. Like no one says that. I mean, like and
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, it's just. So just kind of also the environment too. I mean, like if you're like, let's say you're watching a barred owl or any animal for that matter,
Hmm.
like don't just when you're watching the animal, don't just focus on that. Like, yeah, obviously focus on him and what he's doing,
Hmm.
but at the same time, look at the scene around you. Like, let's say, oh, if I go over here, I can get him doing this. But what if there's like a distracting bush or a bunch of twigs? You know what I mean? Like, also really look at the scene too. When you're if you're already going to be thinking about the animal's behavior, and they try to might as well think about the setting too. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
also running along that kind of same line of thought, not paying just paying attention to the subject, but also paying attention to other animals in that environment. I think a big
Very
example I
true.
have of this is when I was out in Montana photographing a cemetery. I don't know if I mentioned this on a previous episode or not. I'm not sure, but I was photographing a great horned owl there that I had
Oh
found,
yeah.
and he was an awesome. Oh, he was so cool. It was like a really pale morph individual. It wasn't like some
Yeah,
other.
like the what and want the orange eyes, right?
Yeah, yeah, that
Yeah,
one.
they kind of remind me of like eagle owls or like some owl like you kind of see like out in the Middle East or something, where or wherever they're from, because they have like that I don't know that those orange eyes and like the I don't know how to explain it, but that
Yeah,
one reminded me of an eagle owl for some reason, even
I
though
had a
it's not.
couple people say that. I really didn't mess with those eyes that much at all. That's kind of just how they looked. A
Yeah,
lot of the European owls, like the long-eared owls out in Europe,
yeah, they got
have
orange
those
eyes.
orange, really, oh, more orange than what I had, for sure. Mine were just kind of
Yeah,
like a really deep yellowy, but yeah, the long-eared
yeah,
owls and the Eurasian eagle owls out in Europe definitely have those orange eyes. I personally prefer the long-eared owls in North America by far,
yeah,
but
yeah,
the
exactly.
Europeans will fight you over that big time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Um, but what was I? I just got completely lost. And oh yeah, the great horned owl. So I knew he had been hunting red squirrels. So what I
right.
would do is I'd listen for the red squirrel alarm call because they would alarm each other and scream and let them know where the owl was, and it didn't really
Yeah,
work out because they ended up all getting eaten anyways, and I couldn't find any more red squirrels in that cemetery. But I would
yeah.
listen for that call and then I'd walk in the direction. And when I got that shot that I posted, basically, I had heard a call of a red squirrel. I walked and I'm just waiting in this area. And all of a sudden, he flies right in front of me and lands like
Oh
40 feet
yeah,
from me, 10 feet off the ground. And I was just, blown away, because like out here in the East, and I don't know if it's similar where you are, but out in my area in Massachusetts and like New Hampshire in that region, I've noticed that the great horned owls when they are roosting here, I have never found a great horned owl roosting outside of the top of a pine tree. Basically, they're
Oh,
always in the top
yeah.
third of a large pine. Always. I've
Yeah,
not that.
that's the same. Yeah, same
Yep.
here with
Yeah.
that.
Not that it doesn't happen, but I have. I mean, I've been doing this for 8 years, and I have never seen
Yeah,
them sleeping outside of one of those trees. I've seen them hunting outside of those trees, and obviously, if they're in like a heron rookery for their nest or
yeah.
something, their nest isn't in those trees all the time. But
Uh,
when it comes to one just sleeping, I've always seen them up there. But out west,
right.
just seeing one fly really low and getting that shot was
Yeah,
amazing.
it's like that. It's like yeah, out in the west. Like I have a buddy who lives in Alberta,
Mhm.
and like that's why like, the great horned owls there. They're like white. They're
Or the
almost like
subarctic
snow.
ones.
Yeah, they're almost like snowy owls with ear tufts. And because that's kind of what they're remind. So I seen this one picture of one. It looks so snowy owl like. It just looks like a female snowy with like the black gray blotches like on the breasted area.
Hmm.
And they
Yeah.
just have the ear tufts and like yellow orangey eyes. It kind of reminds me of like a snowy almost. But anyway, yeah, the ones out there, like they don't seem to like care as much about people. I don't know what it is. Because like for example, like in my area, the barred owls, like I said, the barred owls I find are generally really chill in general. But
Yeah, I
some
think
like
I'd agree.
depending on like the location, if they're used to people or you know if they're used to seeing people pass by, they can be a lot more chill.
Hmm.
But I based on what I've seen, like videos of my buddies that he just show me on his phone, is that he would just like they come like they'll like land like when they're hunting, they'll land right in front of you almost or really close to you, like not
Hmm.
that they won't even care. Kind of like the barred owls in my area, but here the great horned owls, and like I've only ever seen one hunt once, and it was that juvenile that I got. It's on my Instagram, the one where he's like on that low stump and the
Yeah.
golden hour.
Yeah, I got you.
That's the only time I've ever. They are like strictly almost like night hunters, like so nocturnal.
Hmm.
I find at least the ones in my area, and
Hmm.
they're so as you can I rarely ever see one hunt, so that means they're rarely ever down low
Hmm.
because usually the owl's not going to be hunting from like way up high in a large pine tree most of the time.
Yeah. It's
So
the best hunting spot, man. Just way up in a pine tree.
yeah,
You can't see anything.
exactly. Yeah, unless they're hunting like I don't know, like a or they could just be hunting like something like a red squirrel in a tree. But like usually it's when they're on the ground. Like it's gonna be hard to nail their talons and get it right while it's on a thin branch. You know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
yeah, but
Yeah. The
yeah,
oops, sorry, a minute. Yeah. It's weird in Montana. I guess this is another. Sorry, just tripped over my words. I guess that this is another element of knowing the animal's behavior because out
hmm
here, because it's weird. The ones out in Montana, my experience, I found two of them and they were roosting like 20 to 15 feet off the ground, like sleeping, not even
yeah,
roosting. Out here,
yeah,
they're always way up high. And once again,
exactly.
if you're looking for great horned owls, your uh, criteria of what vegetation you're going to search through to find them for roosting areas is going to look
Mhm.
different in different areas. If I'm out
Exactly.
here, I've flushed owls in I've actually not on purpose, obviously. I was looking for
Yeah.
solid owls in Iowa, and I flushed a great horn that was roosting like 10 feet off the ground. This big great horn just flew right out in front of me. It was crazy.
Wow.
I didn't mean to flush him,
Yeah.
obviously. I was just looking for saw-whets. But
Yeah.
yeah, if you're coming from the Midwest or if you're coming from the West and you come out to the East and you want to find a great horned owl, where they're going to be nesting is completely different. And
Yeah.
also on your thought about barred owls being pretty chill, I would agree, especially those ones in the Pacific Northwest where they like let people come up and take pictures of them with their cell phones and stuff.
Yeah.
But I found in Iowa, first off, they're all over the place in Iowa. I've got family
Yeah.
out in Iowa, kind of in the kind of like in the like 2 hours south of Minneapolis, kind of.
Oh
I
yeah.
yeah, I don't expect you to know what that means, but for anyone from Iowa, if anyone's listening to this, kind of
Yeah.
that area. And
Yeah.
I I will see if you drive out around at sunset, I'll see 5 bards a night. Like no kidding. They're like
Wow.
red-tailed hawks. It's crazy, but
Huh.
a lot of them are very skittish. Like you pull over the car and they fly away. They freak out.
Yeah.
Not always.
Yeah.
I had one that was just sitting on a fence post and I just stuck my camera out at him. He didn't care at all. But I've had some where you just pull over and they freak out and fly away. And that's also, you have to know your area and know how
Mhm.
habituated the animals are
That's
and
true.
factor that into how you're going to photograph them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
That's
also, I
true.
think that kind of plays into ethics. We mentioned this earlier, and I said I'd come back to it. I think knowing the animal's behavior, this is kind of even above how it's going to affect how effective your photography is.
Yeah.
Knowing that animal's behavior is going to help make sure you're not stressing out that animal too much when you're photographing.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
Yeah, if you want to add more onto that, yeah, I'll lose you.
Yeah, so for me, like being knowing their behavior and how it ties into ethics is like kind of like a win-win because I find when you see those baited like owl shots, like
Mm-mm.
it's almost like you can tell it's baited, and like
Yeah, it's true.
even let's say like even if the photo is like compositionally or like technically let's say it is a good photo like scene wise,
Mhm.
like pretend that it's not baited, like you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And if you look at that, but then you see the owl, like you can usually tell like if it's like eyes bug-eyed, eyes open,
Yeah.
or if it's like pouncing and there's like a camera set up there like wide angle, like you
Mhm.
know it's like it's obviously that's baited somehow. And
Yeah.
then it just like it takes away because it's not natural. Like, you just people aren't unless you gotta be blind like to see how oh that's an incredible moment captured in the wild. Like
Yeah.
it's you gotta be blind to be think like that. But
The Yeah, it's interesting. I think when it comes to unethical tactics utilized for achieving an image, that definitely
yeah,
degrades the value of the image to me. Because I think,
eight
people will
hundred
say
percent.
separating the art from the artist, right? If there's a photographer who's an asshole, but their work is amazing, I'll still like their work. But the issue with an image, if someone uses baiting to capture an image, then,
Yeah,
or
it's
some other
like
unethical tactic, then the immorality of that is kind of intertwined in the image itself. It's kind of embedded there. It's part of that image. And even if the image is incredible, granted, I think a lot of the images of baited owls, not all the time, but a lot of them are just pretty boring and not
yeah, and they're just
anyways.
like exactly.
And
Yeah.
but I think even regardless if it's an amazing image, it's like, well, if I took an amazing image of, you know, whatever warbler species after using playback for 24 hours straight, but also when you're talking about the baiting of the owls and things like that, you really know, you can tell, as you're saying, like you can usually
Mhm.
tell if it's a baited shot.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can really tell if they don't clone out the mouse.
Oh,
so
yeah.
so there's just an
Yeah.
owl going after a mouse. I've seen them some images like that, but also if it's an owl just like going to pounce at a random open field, like a snowy,
Yeah.
and like its claws are extended towards this really just
Mhm.
open patch of snow where there's nothing for it to grab. It's kind of like, okay,
Exactly.
is it trying to eat snow? Is it thirsty? Like, what the hell's going on? And
Exactly.
it can be really, once you learn a tactic, I think a lot of people are just uneducated on what baited images look like. They just don't know. Maybe even that baiting is a thing, but once you catch on to
Yeah.
that, it can be pretty easy to tell. And I
Yes.
think
Mhm.
being able to spot that is important, but also just making sure you're not you know accidentally, because I mean, if you're baiting an owl and the potential repercussions, I would want to do an episode on baiting at some point and kind of discuss the
Yeah.
actual logistical real effects of baiting,
Yeah.
and talk about that. But like, let's say everything that is assumed about baiting is true, and that if you bait an owl, there is a high likelihood that it will you know die, right? Or I think that's
Mhm.
usually the argument that's proposed, whether that be through a
Yeah.
vehicular strike or over habituation to people and bringing it into a area with people and then it getting shot or eating rodenticide or whatever, you know. But being able to understand animal behavior and respectfully photograph that animal is just important to make sure, because
100%.
as I was saying, if you are doing all that stuff, I completely lost my train of thought there again. But if you are doing all that, if you're baiting an owl and it's hurting the owl, then it's like, that's one thing. But
Yeah.
if you're trying to photograph a piping plover and you push it too much and stretch it out too much, you may not know that. You're just,
Yeah.
you just
That's
uneducated. And knowing the animal's behavior, as you said, you can never know too much about a subject. No one's complaining like, oh
mhm.
man, I know too much about the ecology of killdeer. Like,
Yeah,
no
yeah.
one's saying that. So
Yeah.
the more you know, the more you can effectively and ethically photograph them. You know what I'm
Right, exactly. And the thing with owls is that people always talk about baiting, but owls,
saying?
how it is like it's super unethical. It's obviously a problem. But another thing, with owls, I find especially that I see more often because I have a spot. There's a spot in where I shoot that it's not super like it's not like anywhere compared to like Downs View Park in Toronto or anything like
Mhm.
that where it's like you get like literally hundreds of photographers lined up.
Yeah.
Like we get like a maybe a group 8 or 10 people sometimes usually, and it's like right when I'm never there because it's like harsh daylight, 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a sunny
Hmm.
day.
Yeah.
So so many people seem to think, oh, more sunlight equals better photos. And like I don't know about that. So
Hmm.
and so people will go, they go shooting up there, and there's the crowds. Like for example, these barred owls, one of the nesting spots in my area is that
Hmm.
they don't seem to mind people. You can honestly be right underneath the nest, like 1 or 2 people. I don't know why you would have to ever get that close anyway.
Hmm.
But if you were theoretically, like the barred owls would still go up. They would go up to the tree cavity, feed the babies, and they wouldn't care at all.
Hmm.
But add like a few more people, like go from like maybe 1 or 2 to go, I don't know, 5 to 8, like you know what I mean? Anywhere like when it's like bigger, like the bigger size of the crowd than
Yeah.
just compared to 1 or 2 person. I find my experience just by watching, they feel like it's like one big predator, like just like more predators, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Well, definitely not more predators because I find because when it's just been me, like I don't think that will see me as a predator or just 1 or 2 people.
Yeah.
But I think they the whole crowd kind of look to them it's like one big creature that they don't see as a human. It's just so just knowing that is not only that, it's just people. Some people like they'll all move. It's like it's so weird. It's like a big all one brain crowd. Like they all move together. It's like when the owl flies, they all approach like the specific crowd I'm talking about.
Hmm.
It's like
No, I know
it's
exactly what you're talking
it's
about.
like,
We
it's
have
like,
we
it's
have the
like, it's
same
like
thing
a
here.
cloud. Like the owl will take off because they've already flushed it, and
Hmm.
they'll follow it again. Like it's just like it's. I don't know. I've just seen that. I'm like, well, I've been approaching. It was like an overcast day, so I could kind of shoot all day. Got out like mid afternoon,
Hmm.
and I could just see like 8 to 10 people there. I'm like, oh great, it's definitely there. But then so I said, fuck it, I'm not gonna go photograph the owls.
Hmm.
But I had to cross the trail anyway, where the owls were, to get to where I was gonna go next.
Hmm.
So I kind of just like I looked. I'm like looking around to see if I can even see the owl, but I was passing by, and it's like it was really low to the ground. I'm like, oh, that would have been a great photo if those people weren't there. Because I would
Hmm.
have tried, you know what I mean? But then there's like one big moving rain cloud just like swarming in closer to the owl as one. It's like,
Yeah.
kind of just, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's kind of sad to watch because the barred owls will hunt midday. That's
Hmm.
where all where those unethical people are out in my area.
Hmm.
So even when it's trying to hunt, they'll hunt all day. So I mean, you know what I mean? It's written when it's trying to hunt for the feed the babies. You know what I mean? It's like leave
Yeah.
it alone. Like it's when the babies were still like in the nest, they haven't started peeking out yet. So there's really starting to develop. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? So they,
Yeah.
they kind of need all the food they can get.
Hmm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah. So
Yeah, it's crowds are tough, and we're getting long on time, so it's tough because I do really want to dive into that, but I think that's gonna have to be a full another episode. But
or maybe a
it's
part two.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
part two. Yeah.
it's I think I did touch on this with Matt a little bit, and I'll touch on it a bit. There are a lot of things that are really heavily attacked in the community, say baiting, but
Yeah.
then there's other things like crowds that aren't
Yeah.
talked about quite as much. I know I think they are pretty nuanced. It depends on the
Yeah.
individual owl's behavior, but
Exactly. Yeah.
crowds, and once again, that's just knowing the behavior and how that affects the subject. But crowds
Yeah.
can be a pretty substantial issue. I
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
know I think it's the largest issue when you have an animal that doesn't really like people. It's not really habituated, and it is
Mhm.
losing sleep and energy over watching people. Basically, the crowd's keeping it awake or
Exactly,
repeatedly
yeah, or
flushing it.
preventing it to hunt and stuff like that.
Yes.
'Cause I
And
find some like a lot, even with mammals, I find with the barred owl, well, just owls and mainly predators, anything that hunts for their food. Like
mhm,
if you find like a location, where they're going to be consistently hunting, and they're a pretty like worry species. If it sees you and it's like because the barred owls, what they do, they freeze. I find like when they're being bothered by people, so they won't fly away. A lot of times, they freeze up and like they just don't know what to do. And that's
mhm,
already there. So their brain's already going like miles and miles a minute, like just scared out of its mind. That's already wasting so much energy.
yeah.
You know what I mean? It needs to hunt, and like a lot of times it's in the winter because they're more visible in the winter and the summer. So
Mhm,
that's and like food's very limited in the winter. So it's like Yeah, I know it's really sad to be honest.
Yeah, I
When
think
people,
there are, from what I've heard, and I don't want to be sitting here claiming this as objective fact because I do kind of err
right?
on the side of caution, but I have heard reports of, if the sources from where I got this were to be believed, and these aren't like people I know, these are like articles and things like that. There have been snowy owls that have died due to over photographing of people. They
Yeah,
just basically starved to death. I've heard a shorted owl, I believe in Ontario, got just so flushed that it died from too many people. And then
yeah,
I heard,
yeah.
this was from a person that I heard, but I heard northern saw-whet owl have died through that. I've never heard
Oh
about
yeah,
bards or screeches. I'm sure it's happened, but when you have
yeah,
especially like those migratory birds, I feel like
yeah.
if you're
Exactly. It's
keeping
more
it,
common. It's more common for them for the migratory birds. Yeah,
if you keep, I mean, if you have 20 people lined up at a long-eared owl all day long, that thing's not sleeping. If it's looking at you, that might push it out. Well, it's gonna limit its energy. That might push it out to hunt in daylight hours as well, which can result in predation from another avian predator of some kind, whether that be another species of owl or an eagle or a hawk or a falcon or whatever.
yeah,
And but once again, crowds are very nuanced. The issue with ethics discussions on here is like they're so complicated that each topic kind of would need its own episode. I would love
exactly.
to dive into crowds, but it's like just a ton
Yeah,
of stuff. But I just think overall, just
mhm.
knowing an animal's behavior is just really going to help you be more ethical when you're out in the field. Now, we're getting kind of close to our wrap up time. So, one
Okay.
last question to wrap it up. What would be three resources that you could give to people to learn about tracking animals and like learning about their behavior for anyone who's listening to this and be like, okay, I want to learn more about this. This sounds important.
Okay, so I feel like most people know about eBird. I'm not gonna count that as one, so I'm just gonna say ebird.org before I start, because that's it's people can upload bird sightings. I think we all know what that is so far.
Mm-hmm.
But other one, it's like the same thing as eBird, but it's like all species, and a lot of people don't know about it. It's something called iNaturalist.org,
Yeah.
which okay, I use that one for mammals
Mm-hmm.
because people, it's like eBird, but it's literally any living organism. It can be like plant, fungus, reptiles, amphibians, birds,
Mm-hmm.
so on and so on. I don't know. I just like that. I wish eBird was kind of like, well, and also just the way it can be used. Like, for example, for eBird, if you're going after a certain species, let's say
Mm-hmm.
you just want to look for a certain group like a type of bird. Like, say you just want to go after sandpipers. eBird in the map can't just type sandpipers and show you all the different sandpipers. Like, think of like you have to type in the exact species, but sometimes you don't know what exact species are in your area. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
definitely one I like to use, especially for mammals, if you want to get the tracking, is iNaturals because you can just find mammals. It's like eBird, but for like mammals. That's what I use it for.
Mm-hmm.
So are we just talking about like just tracking or just like animal
Behavior
behavior
at
as
all,
well?
just like resources where you learn about whether it be tracking
Okay.
or learning about behavior or something like that.
So yeah, definitely iNaturals is one that's for kind of like where to find the animals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Yeah, number two, I honestly just say just get out as much as possible. Like do a lot of scouting, even if you're there harsh daylight or just it's not gonna be good photos, but at least you're gaining a knowledge. Just kind of explore your environment. Like kind
Mm-hmm.
of look around, know where's the best way, where the sun's gonna be at, just basic stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And also like look at like ways where you can approach and like where you would want to hang around. Because
Mm-hmm.
for example, you're trying to track an animal, it's gonna be moving, so it's probably not gonna it's not gonna be sitting and it's like in certain times of days when it's moving, it's not gonna be in one spot. So try to like find like stick to an area where it's gonna be good better for photos because there's nothing more disappointing than when you actually find a really cool animal and it's in like a shitty environment, but it's all background is all distracted. Like,
Yeah.
there's not a worse feeling. It's like, oh, and get the sharp shot perfectly in focus, you get close. But then there's just the background or
Just
there's
horrible. Yeah, just
just
horrendous.
yeah, there's not a worse feeling because then like for me and then you'll try to like clone every individual thing out or something like that. Like that just looks like it then it just looks even worse because just yeah.
Yeah,
And
I get exactly what you're saying.
so to save you a lot of disappointment. Because I mean, like let's say like the animal was moving, let's say you're like for example with my coyote situation. You set up and you know it's gonna be there. Like
Mhm.
if you were at let's say you're at that spot and you see it, get a photo of an animal and it's a really shitty background, it's gonna keep moving. It's gonna keep headed to another direction. It's
Yeah.
gonna be, it's gotta get where it's going. So maybe if you set up in a spot where it's probably gonna stop in the background, really, or nice, whatever kind of photo you're going for, it's be so much more rewarding. Just like the extra kind of few steps or extra more field work, where it's gonna be. It's
Mhm.
like you can't know too much, right? I mean, it's like we said earlier, and
Exactly. Yeah.
so just kind of so kind of rambling a bit. So
That's
one
right.
number one, eye naturalist.
Mhm.
Two, like number two, like field scouting. You know what I mean? Just look at like just really observe your environment.
Mhm.
And for number three, yeah, honestly, I'm gonna add eBird back in because eBird, a lot of people don't use iNaturalist a
Mhm.
lot as
Yeah.
compared to eBird. So,
Mhm.
and a lot of times, like birds are very good subjects.
Mhm.
So, yeah, definitely you utilize eBird. Yeah, that's has to be. That's my number. That's my top three.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you. That was a really good
Perfect.
episode.
Yeah, yeah.
Any
Enjoy this.
final thoughts you want to throw in real quick?
Yeah, this was so it's pretty fun. This was a pretty fun thing to do, and just kind of like a good conversation.
Mhm.
So yeah, thanks Martin for having me on, and I hope you guys could learn something, like at least something. Like I could offer one good thing you learned, or maybe with tracking or
You
animal
definitely, yes, you
behavior.
definitely offered some good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that yeah, this was fun.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on.